I mean, what you want can span the gamut. But what are some of your basic needs for you to be able to enjoy the work that you do, for you able to be satisfied and fulfilled, and for you to be in a position where you're really, truly growing?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to New Money, where we talk to movers and shakers about how they made it. I'm your host, Rosemarie Miller, here with the CEO and founder of ColorComm, Lauren Wesley-Wilson. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Lauren, you just wrote a book. What do you need? What inspired you to write a book right now?
Oh my goodness. I mean, well, I didn't write it. You're right. I did just write a book. This process has been going on since 2021. So I'm so excited for it to be live and launching in April 2024. But I decided to write this book. I'm really writing this for women of color, but as I read through it, as I look at the material, it's really for all women. It's really for all women to understand difference and our place in the workplace and how we can advance, because we're in a new era. We're in a new climate in how we approach the world from a business perspective post-COVID. And some of the rules have changed. Some of them have remained the same. But we as employees have certainly changed in how we have expectations for our companies that we work for and the goals and our needs. And so this book is really talking to women of color and women how to understand the professional game that's being played around you and how to approach your work in a new way and how to approach your career from a new direction.
You know, in the book, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and we've heard a lot about that. I'm curious, what are your biggest pieces of advice for someone who's battling imposter syndrome in the workplace?
I think the best way to battle imposter syndrome is to really be prepared. We oftentimes doubt ourselves for what? Why are we doubting ourselves? I think if we remove the doubt and we go to the facts, we wouldn't necessarily be in the roles that we're in if we weren't prepared. So thinking through the process in which got us there, but really thinking through the material and having more confidence and having more confidence in our work and our ability to achieve things that we may not have been. Maybe these things are stretch goals for us or far-reaching items, but being able to have the confidence to say, look, I can do it, I think it starts there.
Yeah. You know, and I get that because as women, especially women of color, we'll look for a job, right? And so we're looking for the qualifications, and maybe we don't meet 2 or 3 of them, and we just won't apply. Whereas a man, maybe he only meets 1 and he's applying just like that.
Well, we see that so often, and that's a really good point. I think with women of color in the workplace, there's so much pressure on us, and what we want to do is we want to be able to perform. We want to be able to deliver, and we need the confidence to be able to do that. And so I think sometimes we're held back by ourselves by saying, you know, we don't have 9 out of the 10 criteria, let me not apply, because there's a microscope on us, right? I mean, there's a microscope on us because when we're in the working world, we're the ones that stand out. There's only oftentimes a handful of people of color in the room, in the work environment, and we're more noticeable than ever. And so I think our issue is really wanting to deliver, and I think we have the capabilities to do so.
But okay, let's go back to the title of the book. What do you need? Why did you decide that this was the title?
That's a great question. Well, this title derived from how I started the business of ColorComm. And nearly 13 years ago, when this business was started, it was started over a lunch. It was nowhere where it is today. But over this meal, we were gathering women of color in the business, and we were asking them, what do you need? Because to be able to excel, it's a mutually beneficial experience. I have needs, you have needs. How can we help one another? So oftentimes we go to networking event or we think solely about ourselves. How can I get a job? How can I meet this person? But what about servicing the needs of other people? Because that's really what community is all about. And so I want readers to be able to pick up this book and define what they need to be able to advance at work, which is very different than what you want, right? I mean, what you want can span the gamut. But what are some of your basic needs for you to be able to enjoy the work that you do, for you able to be satisfied and fulfilled, and for you to be in a position where you're really truly growing.
And so you mentioned, okay, let's not be selfish here and only think about what we need and what we want, but also thinking about what others need and what they want in these networking events. How do you determine what someone else needs or wants?
By having the conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I want this book to reach a wide audience, and I want to have a national conversation about what do you need. Because if you start listening, we ask ourselves this a lot. We ask ourselves this at work. We ask ourselves this at home. We ask ourselves this to our spouses, to our kids. What do you need?
Yeah.
And so thinking about your career in a new direction as what do you need? That question is so powerful, but it's about community. In order to be able to know what the other person needs, we need to be having a dialogue about it. We need to be having a conversation about it.
So you kind of mentioned the origin of ColorComm. Take us back. What was going through your mind when you decided to create this?
So nearly 15 years ago, my career started in Washington, D.C., and I was working in the media relations, corporate communications space, and crisis communications. I had a myriad of jobs in that space. I worked for President Obama on his re-election campaign. I worked on Capitol Hill as a Texas Congresswoman's communications director, and I had some really amazing early experiences, some big experiences in my youth, just starting out in my 20s. And what I noticed through those experiences is that I didn't see people of color doing this work, and I felt very isolated, I felt very alone. And some of the challenges were finding mentors, sponsors, people to advocate for you, and learning some of those tools and resources that are needed as you navigate the professional landscape. And so started this lunch nearly 13 years ago, and we gathered over a meal and brought women together in this industry and asked them the question of what do you need? And it was the idea of somebody there has something to give and something to receive. And so that conversations and connection can truly be mutually beneficial. And so what started back then was truly just a lunch. It has since evolved into a corporation where we are a client service-based business, where we consult with clients and do media relations and strategy. We have our core business, which is our membership organization, where we help women of color advance to executive positions. We have our conference series. So we do a number of things under the brand. But how we really got started was just a small lunch of 30 women in Washington, D.C., gathering with the essence of community at its core.
Well, Lauren, how did you get 30 plus women together for a lunch?
Oh, well, back then no one knew who I was.
Right.
So to get 30 plus women together really involved a mix of a grassroots effort, is identifying some of these women. LinkedIn was such a great resource and tool, and it still is to this day, but being able to identify who they are, scheduling calls, and sooner or later it became word of mouth. The friends would tell their friends, and then these luncheons really became sold out. And we figured out there was a demand here. There was a need to connect beyond just lunch. The women there said, these are women we've never met before. We're doing business together. We are in each other's weddings. We are connecting on calls every Friday. How do we turn this already built-in community into much more? How do we become a membership organization, structure this with a board, and do monthly programming in DC, in New York, in LA, in San Francisco, in Atlanta, in Chicago, and we spread to 9 of the biggest cities in the US and had membership communities across the nation. And it evolved so much more from there.
And so I imagine this was all very new for you. You are the CEO and founder of this growing company. How are you handling it all? Like, what's going through your mind day by day? When did you realize, all right, I can quit my full-time job and focus on this completely?
That's such a great question. Well, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my mother started an advertising agency many years ago. She was in the financial services business. I'm from Missouri, and so she had partnered on, and she had a business in Chicago and St. Louis, and St. Louis is where I'm from. And it was a large business. My grandfather owned a funeral home in Nebraska for 100 years that was in the family. And so entrepreneurship was definitely in my blood. But then I had the safety net of my father, who had been in corporate America for 30 plus years, who thought that was the path to go. And so having experiences from both parents and my grandfather really kind of taught me the framework of how to build a business. And so what people saw on the outside was very different than what was happening on the inside. And so on the outside, these experiences looked fun, and they were, but on the inside, there was a real structure being made. There was a real structure in the beginning, from sourcing out your accounting to your lawyer to, I was working on Capitol Hill at the time early on, and I always talk about early on, I would go to this small business session every Fridays when we were in recess on the Hill, and it was called SCORE, a nonprofit organization and helping small businesses redefine their business plans. And so every week I was being challenged, and I was learning how to really build a business. And the support of my family, who really helped guided me and mentor me in this space, meant that I wasn't doing it alone. I had information, I had education, and I had resources to be able to do this. But I also started this business with $10,000 of my own money. So there's always this misconception that you need to go out and fundraise to make a business. You need to, people throw out numbers to you. You need $100,000, you need millions of dollars, you need $50,000. And those numbers are sometimes incorrect because you don't have the facts to back that up. Starting small, financing as you go along, and really figuring out what your revenue drivers are to building a business is the place to start. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where I started. I blocked out the noise. I was focused, built a plan, had those around me who had experience challenge that plan, and really made a plan to be able to execute a structure into a profitable business.
Into a profitable business. So how did you get there? I mean, you make it sound easy.
Oh, it's not.
Okay.
Oh, I don't want to paint that picture. I mean, it takes dedication and real determination and focus. And I know that all this was going on in my mid to late 20s, really providing the structure for how this business was going to grow. And that meant I sacrificed a lot. I sacrificed a lot of my social time. I sacrificed a lot of my free time, my after hours time. I would wake up and first of all, back then I had no money. I was making no money in the scheme of things now. I mean, I lived in right across the street from the Marriott Hotel, and I would go to the Marriott Hotel before work and after work to use their internet. I was like that strapped, or I'm using internet from a hotel, but I would use their internet to be able to work on the business. To be able to work on the business. I remember one summer we formally launched our business, which was, we had started in 2011, but we had launched in 2012 with this launch party. We were transitioning our luncheons to a membership-based community, and that took infrastructure, and that took time. And I was working full-time, 8:30 to 6:30 at work, and I was going to the Marriott Hotel at 6 a.m. to use their internet and do work before work and do work after work. So it really took time, dedication, and focus. And all my friends, they were going to Las Vegas. They were partying. They were going on whitewater rafting trips. They were having fun. They were going outdoor camping. They were going to Miami. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was skipping all of that because I had a greater focus and determination, and I really saw what the long-term strategy could be. Sacrifice now for what we are in 13 years later, and this is the business that I wake up every morning and get excited to do, and go into our offices in Rockefeller Center with our team and our staff, and being able to ideate and be able to plan and be able to grow. But none of that would have happened if I didn't think of what that short-term sacrifice meant for a greater goal.
So you were in your mid to late 20s starting this business. How did you get people to take you seriously at such a young age?
That was really challenging, to get people to take me seriously. I think on the one hand, the community I was reaching out to were very interested. It was something that hadn't been done before. There are a lot of groups out there that on paper sound similar to the work that we do. But what the feedback we received is how experiential this was for the women that were there, how life-changing and how productive connecting in the way that we structured our programming and events were. And it just wasn't I'm going to go to another program and hear from a speaker. It was, you were walking away with business. You were walking away with new business leads. You are walking away with people who can point you in a direction that could save you 10 years off your professional life, because that's the type of community that we're curating. And so, what was the original question? I'm so sorry.
How did you get people to take you seriously?
So how did I get people to take me seriously? So I think on the one hand, people did take me seriously when it came to curating and programming and events. But on the other hand, it was challenging to fundraise, because I was in rooms with women who were 15, 20 years older than me, and they were thinking, who is this young little whippersnapper? And I often got told, your passion project is cute, your side hustle is, darling, we love it. But it was challenging at times to be able to say, this is not a passion project, this is a business. And this is what I'm looking for from you, and this is how, as a partnership, we're going to help grow together. And over time, it became a no-brainer, and people got used to seeing me in the room, and I was oftentimes the youngest person in the room, and they got used to that, and we were able to do some great business with some great corporations.
Well, Lauren, I want to stop you there, because you're saying people are telling you, cute passion project. What did you do when you went home and you looked at yourself in the mirror and, okay, Lauren, keep going. Like, how did you keep going? How did you stand up when these people that you admire are telling you that it's cute, but
it's cute?
Yeah.
I mean, it hurt. It hurt at the time. Younger Lauren was hurt, was frustrated, but then I paused and said, I need to redefine my pitch. My talking points might not be together. For you to think something is cute when it's really a business, and in months from then, I was going to leave. 8 years ago, I was leaving my full-time job. Well, 9 years ago now, leaving my full-time job to go run ColorComm full-time. So it's more than just a cute business. But everyone doesn't know your plans. Everybody doesn't know your goals, and everybody doesn't align with your mission. And so the way to keep moving forward is to keep moving forward. You have to be able to decipher between advice or that you're going to take seriously or that you're going to ignore. And you have to be able to understand where it's coming from, because the people who might think it's cute or give you a dig, they really don't know you, they really don't know your goals, and you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. So what was the turning point in your story with ColorComm? When did you realize, okay, this is something? I created something. I made it.
I think when I had decided to leave my full-time position in Washington, D.C., working at a crisis firm called Corvus, and we had worked on international governments and stakeholder engagement, and it was very serious work that I was working on. And I was making good money, and I said this was too much. It was too much to balance a full-time position that required a lot of me, and it was too much to be able to work on ColorComm, which was feeling like full-time. The business started to grow tremendously through some of the initiatives that we had launched that year, which was 2015. And I had to make a decision, and a real hard one, to say, what was the turning point? Am I going to stay working like this, or am I going to take a leap of faith and leave and bet on myself? And I've been doing that. And this is the longest full-time job I've ever had. So the years of ColorComm get murky, but the business has been around for 13 years. 9 of those years, I've been working full-time. Those other years, I was working for a company and doing this on the side. So this is the longest full-time job that I've ever had, working for myself and working for ColorComm.
And so what are some challenges you've had to overcome while working at ColorComm?
I think some of the challenges, it's a new set of challenges. People are the biggest commodity to your business. Hiring the right people who are mission aligned with your work, who are in it for the right reasons. After all these years, we have such an amazing community, a network, a huge database, a Rolodex that expands whoever you can think of. And we want people who are there to do the work, who are mission driven. So hiring is certainly a challenge at times. Knowing when to fire can be hard as well. And, continuing to think of strong revenue streams that help grow the business.
So speaking of money.
Yes,
I
let's
know
talk money.
Yes, your money situation has changed a lot since
Sure has.
Yes, you first
Sure
started.
has.
How did you learn how to manage your money?
That's something that I've also learned from a young age too about money management. The ambition and drive that I had started in my youth. And so even when I can remember as early as 16 years old, I had 3 jobs. And it's not because I had to. I was also getting an allowance from my parents. But I was always driven for more. And I remember that summer, my mother said, you made $4,000 this summer. And back then, I'm like, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. And she's like, and since you made $4,000, we're putting this money away into a mutual fund. And I said, no, I want to spend it on CDs and clothes and I invested early on, as early as 16, and I've continued to invest. I carry no debt and really low credit card balances. And so I think I learned about there's 7 principles of money that are often talked about, which is paying off debt and, making sure you're investing and, carrying on good debt. I mean, they're all out there, but being able to follow those and also really knowing what you're spending your money on and having a strong accountant to be able to see cash flow, because that's important to any business, is really paying attention to what's coming in and coming out.
So what have been some of the money challenges you faced in your business?
So some of the money challenges I would say early on is probably fundraising. That was certainly a challenge, and not setting our parameters high enough. Early on, we were working too hard, not smart. We didn't have the proper pricing structure. And so we were giving away too much of our service. This is why everyone loved working with us. This is why, Coca-Cola would say, you are our favorite client. And then we would hear another company say, we love working with you. You give us everything. And we were giving away too much. And it was...
How did you realize this?
It was through mentorship. It was through having other conversations with people in the business who, I will say, have been very helpful to reveal what their structure was, and telling us how we needed to set our minimums higher. And when there was a turning point when we started to make those changes, we got backlash. People complained. Our partners had to pay more to work with us. They didn't like it at first, but they adjusted and accommodated the bar that we set. And not setting your bar high enough, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's the biggest thing of business, and how you can lose a ton of money by not asking for help and not knowing what you don't know.
And so you mentioned that, people in your network, they were able to help you with your pricing structure. Let's talk about mentorship a little bit. We all have mentors, but we don't really know how to navigate the mentorship relationship. And I have mentors, and as a mentee, I sometimes struggle with, what's the most effective way to manage up?
Yeah.
Could you answer that question?
So I love this question because I see so many people doing it wrong. And I think there is a right or wrong way to approach mentorship. Number one, I see mentors always, potential mentees going to ask someone, will you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? Don't ask. Start to have conversations, start to have questions with people you want to engage with. You don't ever need to ask someone, will you be my mentor? I've never asked any of the mentors in my life formally, will you be my mentor? What I've done, the people in my life, is I've asked for their time. Can I have 15 minutes of your time? I have a few questions of my business that I'm having challenges with. Those people have picked up the phone and answered those questions for me. And I never said, will you formally be my mentor? Because it's an exchange of information. That's really what it's about. It's someone who's walked the path before you. And as a mentee, what sometimes you don't realize is oftentimes it's your job to maintain that relationship. It's your job as a mentee to make that effort with that mentor that you want in your life, that you're seeking advice from. Because the mentor, they've walked this whole journey before. And in fact, they have a ton of mentees that they give back to. So what makes you stand out? What makes you worthy of giving of your time is really putting forth an effort, reaching out, scheduling those calls. Early on in my career, one of my biggest mistakes that I made was asking this would-be mentor to lunch. I asked her to lunch, and that was the biggest mistake I could have made because it took almost a year for us to go to lunch because she had other commitments that were more of a priority than someone like me who she hardly knew, and I really wanted to learn from her. But I hung in there. And I chased her down and we went to lunch, and a year later I realized I wasted so much time because I had spent a whole year chasing down this mentor. And one of the things I also recommend as a young person or any level of career you're at, have more than one mentor. One person cannot be responsible for your career and for your learning. Have 5 mentors if you can, 10 mentors if you can, because as you grow in your career, mentorship will change, and the role of that mentor that started off with you will either evolve or not, but you have to evolve with those around you. So you'll need mentors to meet you where you are in your level of your career.
Well, that is a beautiful ending to this interview. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.